voice amplified. So, I'm assuming this is working. This is Business Selector's extension for Behat, and it's an extension for Behat that I wrote for a particular use case that I seem to have encountered a few times, both at Sky and Orange, mainly using Behat in a corporate environment. A little bit about me. I've met most of you before. I'm not quite sure I've met all of you on the internet. So I have worked in PHP for about 5 years, and for a lot of that time for Sky Bet, and for some of that time for Orange Digital. And in both of those organisations, I was there at the start when we tried to bring Behat in and start using it. So this extension tries to address some problems. So if any of you have heard of me talk about Behat before, I always talk about what the BDD workflow in larger organisations tends to look like. So if you imagine the journey of speccing something out all the way through to developing and testing it, normally it looks like something like this. So business analysts and designers spec out a particular feature. The testers write some tests for that feature. Developers build that feature, and then testers test that it works, and it feeds all the way back up to the business analyst, who kind of rubber stamps that and says, yes, that is complete, that's met my original requirements. So I find that the use of Mink extensions in this context can sometimes be a little bit difficult, because if you think about business analysts, designers and testers at this conceptual phase here, they don't know anything about the implementation, and a Mink extension requires, in a lot of cases, that we need to know how things will be implemented with alt titles, names. Having to know that information up front is a little difficult. So here's an example of that, I should say. So now these are using the Mink extension steps, and this is off the Behat manual page. So given I'm on, and then a specific URL to a page, when I fill in search with behaviour-driven development, and in this case, search is taken to mean an input with the ID search or the name search, and I press the search button, then I should see Agile Software Development. And here's the 2 steps underneath. So when I fill in, and this regular expression specifically has to match alt, ID, name, title. And that can be difficult because when we are practicing behaviour-driven development, we want to be able to define all the behaviour up front in a complete test, which we can pass to developers, and it will fail. So we get that nice kind of green-red cycle. Some other problems that we've encountered at Sky and Orange. So Mint requires implementation details, which I've already covered. Test teams with no PHP skills. So I've worked for a couple of test teams now where they've been using, say, Selenium to record tests and use them. So they've got a lot of test knowledge, how to test things, but maybe not so much PHP knowledge. So writing custom steps can be really difficult. And then another issue that we've had is difficulty identifying elements on the page using Mink extension. So this is a case of maybe a particular form field doesn't have a name ID, or it doesn't have an ID alt, and so on. It's difficult to find, and that happens a lot with links as well. So links on a page are normally fairly anonymous. So finding them using something more precise than the interface that the Mink extension provides would be a good thing. So that's why I came up with the idea for business selectors. Now, business selectors is an extension, and it has kind of 3 moving parts. So it has some steps that it supplies for you, and it has a YAML file containing selectors and a YAML file containing URLs. So instead of defining a particular page that we visit, we now have a name, home page, which maps to a particular page in this URL's YAML file. And instead of identifying a link with its alt or ID, you can now identify it using CSS and just have a placeholder here. So if you can imagine, you don't really need to know anything about the implementation now. You just kind of apply these semantically nice names to elements on the page, maybe from the designs or from the spec, and you don't have to worry about the implementation. Instead, later on, the person who's implementing it, the developer, will go through and say, right, so I used self-link as a class in this instance, or I actually called the form that we're talking about name form. So we can get the best of both worlds. We can get tests written up front, which will fail, and then we can get developers just to fill in the gaps when they know more about the implementation. I tried to copy as much as possible the make steps. So I've just subtly changed the steps so that, because you can't have a step which is implemented twice exactly the same. So all the things that Mink extension can do, business selectors can do as well. So things like clicking, hovering, ascertaining the presence of something on the page or not, interaction with forms, all that stuff's covered. We also added some things in particular which we found we were doing all the time. So working with Drupal, a lot of the modules use iframes, so we added something in there to quickly change between iframes and go back to the original page. That kind of thing. Also attaching files, we tended to do that quite a lot, so we added a step in to do that. And then waiting for something to appear or disappear, again, we were doing that all the time, so we added that in. Here's an example of how it's configured. In the extensions section of your config, you just put the location for your URLs file, your selectors file, and a path, asset path, which is somewhere where you store your files to be uploaded. And timeout, which is something specifically for when waiting for things to appear or disappear. And that's all that you need to do to actually get it to work, apart from, obviously, in your feature context, you just have to use the business selector context, you have to link it. So I've got a demo of that working. I realised actually when I come up with the demo, it's fairly benign because we're just going to show Selenium running. But I'll show you. So I'm going to run a Selenium test, and these are actually bundled in the extensions examples. So this basically runs every one of the steps against a really simple example. So things like, given I go to the page, follow the link, test the button. So when I run that, yeah. So all these forms have been interacted with via the business selector extension. This bit is demonstrating the waiting for things to appear and disappear on the page. Which normally takes around 30 seconds. And then the next set of tests basically check for the presence of things on the page, and there's a couple of iframe interactions there as well. So that, if you're looking to get started with it, the set of examples in there shows you how to use every step, shows you how to set up selectors YAML and URLs YAML. So yeah, so if we're going back to this diagram, I think business selectors or that process pushes up the writing of the tests above into this conceptual phase, so that you can write these tests before you implement anything, and I think that's really important. Yeah, and to cover how, and looking at how this kind of affects the workflow, at this stage when we get down to the developer, there'll be, in theory, you should be able to have a full suite of failing tests which you can then develop against. And that's it. Has anybody got any questions on it?
In your Behat UI,